Oh, too many buttons, Bill. There we go. No, good morning. I'm thrilled to have Doug Dawson here. Doug has proved to be an extraordinary resource, and as Bill said, in addition to Benton's Headlines daily newsletter, you should be reading Doug Dawson's Pots and Pans. And so Doug's just a wonderful resource, has been in this field forever in a lot of different roles, including as did you own or operate an ISP?
No, I owned and operated, yes.
There you go. Okay. So he has a perspective that I think is really interesting and is going to talk about a variety of different topics today. So I'm excited. I don't know, Bill, whether you wanted me to introduce Doug, but you probably want to do your community catch up first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's do a little round robin and let's hear from Kankakee County. What's new and good in Kankakee County today?
Let's see, we got all of our surveys are out there. They've been distributed. I have not checked to see what type of responses we've gotten yet. We're starting to look at how a system might be put together and getting ready to start talking to providers and seeing how we can build a synergy together.
Good, thank you. And Bond County, Alina?
Some of the work that we've done this week is to actually coordinate with Kaskaskia in terms of some survey sharing and some collaboration, potential collaboration between our counties.
Oh, good, good. And Alina, let's hear from about Livingston County. So.
Sorry, I was helping somebody else get connected. Sorry about that. So we worked on the postcard distribution, some mail distribution for their survey itself, and getting those out, did some Facebook posts, things like that.
Good, thank you. And Peoria Woodford.
Good morning, everyone. I'm trying to grab a little bite there in between. Sorry. So we're doing really well with our survey. It feels like we have over 700 responses in Peoria and over 300 in Woodford County. We're continuing to do community presentations to village councils, just as a reminder of the value and importance, and those connections are really important, I think, especially going forward as we build relationships with that units of local government. I think our team's doing a really good job of pushing it out through their social media channels with the support of the EDC communications staff. We're trying to work on different postings and techniques. And then yesterday we had, I felt like just a really good series of conversations with 3 of our internet service providers. And then we also kind of embedded within our conversations discussions among local efforts that are related to broadband access. And we have 2 really significant projects happening in the region. One is Peoria has been a contender for a Promise neighborhood proposal. And so that team is really, they're doing some work in that Promise neighborhood concept and working to position themselves hopefully for a federal award. They have 5 community digital navigators that have been hired and beginning to, I'm sorry, that's not the right number. I need to go back to my notes. I don't have them in front of me, but they have hired a pilot basis of community navigators that are intended to work in that digital literacy space and helping families. The ultimate goal of the project would be to create Wi-Fi access throughout the 61605 neighborhood, which is our highest rate of poverty in the region, really in the Midwest. one of those high poverty areas. And then the other project that we connected with, Peoria is part of a mid-sized city research project that is looking at how do you build infrastructure that supports autonomous vehicles. And so there's a core team that's part of our innovation network center in Peoria called Distillery Labs. And so they gave us a really brief report on the status of their work that I think is really helpful as a team to understand, what all these different initiatives and making sure that we're communicating and connecting to one another. So, and we can share out some of those slides because I'm talking without my notes and hopefully I didn't misspeak on any of those details.
Kathy, thanks so much for that really interesting report. I think we think about broadband technology, we always think about people in their homes, but we know that more and more, everything in the world is going to be connected, the street lights and the stoplights and the water mains and many other things out in the world. And so it's not just a network to serve individual homes, but you want a network that's flexible to meet many needs. Let's hear from Ogle County.
So Ogle County, we have the survey out. We've been connected up with Facebook, the Ogle County Facebook. Remember that Ogle County is also Boone, Lee, and Putnam. So everyone is on the same page. We're pretty excited because our Ag Connection has put the flyer in the Farm Week. So that will be coming out in Illinois in July 11th. So that is one of our best selling pieces, I think, at this point. I think next, our next move is to start seeing where we can have our communities informational sessions and just keep distributing the word, and at the same time get our internet connections, who's available to assist in the project. So talking is our biggest key right now.
Good. Well, thanks for that report. And it's great to see your regional effort, multi-county effort continuing. And then George Kaskaskia, what's going on with your group?
Well, we've been pretty active, Bill. The survey has really been issued and being pushed. Our deadline is July 22nd to complete, but I have to give a shout out to my team. A lot of them are really kicking in gear and showing some strong leadership, and Cheryl Brinkman in particular. The survey is front and center on the Clinton County website, and we've shared it institutional wide with our directors. It reaches about 13,000 people, and I know additional attempts are made to disseminate it through Marion County, as well as Mr. White indicated. There's that collaboration beginning with Bond County. So looking forward to seeing the data come in.
Good. Thank you so much. Just refresh Doug here. This Accelerate program is 14 weeks, and we're on week 7 today. And we've got communities obviously working on community surveys, broadband provider interviews. They've created a vision statement, or at least began to draft one. And now we're really looking to see, okay, how do we begin to move forward based on what we've gathered, what kind of information. And certainly finding broadband provider partners is high on the list of all these folks. And hopefully these interviews are setting a foundation for a relationship building. And so Doug is here, as Adrienne already mentioned, a strong expert on all things community-centered broadband. Doug has been involved in hundreds of projects that involve cooperatives and communities, private sector, public sector partnerships with all kinds of companies. And so I asked him today to come in and talk about, when he's thinking about picking a partner, what does he do? What does he think about in terms of matching up your community with a private sector or cooperative kind of provider. So Doug, I'm just going to let you take it away, and we have until 9:30 for your time, central time, and so 8, or I guess that's 10:30 your time. So thanks, Doug, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Let me share my screen here. That's not what I wanted to share. That's today's meeting. There we go. Very good. Yeah. As Adrian said earlier, I've been an ISP before. In fact, I own 13 ISPs, so I've really been an ISP. And so this is a list today to talk about how to find broadband partners. Would have been helpful with a few of the reports I got that maybe we did this a week or two ago. Sure, doing your ISP interviews, but these are the things that community should be looking for in partners, because all partners are not equal at all. And so, the real question here is, how do you find a truly trustworthy broadband partner? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So there's a lot of interesting characteristics of a partner, and there'll be a slide on each one of these. Their experience, their own goals and their vision, their financial strength, their capacity to grow, and their recognition of your value as a community. And so unfortunately, what I'm seeing this year are a lot of ISPs who simply have their hand out and want you to give them ARPA money, and they don't really want anything to give you anything in return. And so they are not, that still may be the kind of partner you get, but there's, in the long run, there, I think you want to get something better than that if you can. So first is experience. Right now, another thing we're seeing, there's a whole lot of new investor-driven ISPs that are popping up out of the woods. I mean, they have no experience as ISPs. They're either 0 years old and they're going to get these grants to get started, or they've been around 2 or 3, 4 years. And they may be great at ISPs. Some of these folks come in with very experienced teams. But what we have found is we've seen too many examples of new ISP teams that get put together and they don't gel as a management team. One of them is in Bill's state. Cook County, Minnesota had exactly that problem. They partnered with a brand new partnership who absolutely destroyed the project. I mean, it just fell apart, and they defaulted on loans, and it was strictly the fault of the ISP team. And so they all look good on paper, but they had never worked together before. And we don't know what happened inside, but I imagine they were fighting with each other all the time. And so, what you really want is someone who's been around for a while. And this is why we like electric co-ops and telephone co-ops and independent telephone companies. There's other, and we'll talk about different kinds of partnerships. Nowadays, there's partnering with other municipalities who've now been in business 10 and 15 and 20 years. So that experience matters, because that means they have their act together. They've worked out all the bugs, and they really know what they're doing as a business. And then really experience with the proposed technology. We see, guys who've only been wireless providers proposing to come and build fiber. They may be great at it, but they have no experience at it. And so, they're going like, well, of course we can do that. Well, nothing is that simple. And so, I personally, I would have a problem picking somebody as a partner who had never done the technology they're proposing before. And then the one that matters most for local communities is experience working with you guys. And the fact is, local communities are not great partners sometimes. And so, you have to have somebody who's got the patience to work with local communities. I mean, you do a lot of things that drive ISPs directly up the wall. It takes a long time to make a decision. They ask you for a decision. You go, well, we've got to put that on the notice for the city council or the county council 2 weeks from now, and then it has to go through 2 different meetings, and then we'll get a decision to you. And that's not how ISPs need decisions made. And so that absolutely drives them crazy. ISPs are absolutely petrified of open records laws. They do not want their trade secrets to be published. And so they're very, very hesitant to put things in writing to you about what they're doing. I mean, they simply are just, it scares them. They don't want their competitors to know what they're doing. They also get really scared if a project drags them into municipal purchasing processes, I know that those over the years have been designed to get rid of fraud, but they end up costing more. When you buy things through government RFPs, they cost more than what commercial ISPs can negotiate on their own. They do. I've seen it 1,000 times, and so that, you know, and the length of the time it takes to just buy something simple. And with today's supply chain, what you do is when you see something available, you buy it. You don't even hesitate. You buy it within the hour. It's a different world than we used to have. So, you know, the ISP going vision is very important. There's a lot of ISPs who are not in it for a long term. I mentioned those investor-driven ISPs. I think they have an idea to be in this business for 7 to 10 years and bail on you. They're bail on you, meaning they're going to sell the business hoping to make a one-time big gain. And again, if that gets you fiber and that's the only partner you can get, that's fine. But you don't know who your ultimate partner is going to be. Who's going to be the one who's going to be here? They're going to be here from year 1 to 10. Who's going to be here from year 10 to 100? And so, you know, understanding what their goals are, and that's the hardest one to get them to admit to. Having been in the business, I can sniff them out every time, but it's really hard for a community to figure out that that's what they're really doing. So, you know, ISPs, if they're going to get into the kind of projects and especially in the rural parts of your county, they need to have a realistic expectation of earnings. There's not very much profit in being a rural ISP, even with the 75% grants we're talking about. It's barely going to make its head above water in rural areas. And so, you know, anyone who comes into this has to have a long time frame. It's one of the reasons I really like co-ops again, because they go, well, will this thing break even in 40 years? That's perfect. You know, that's their mindset. They've already been in that business. That's how they made money on their electric company or on their existing telephone company. They never made wild profits. And their goal is to get bigger and to serve people. And they have that long expectation that a few percent return over time is good enough. And so for commercial ISPs who expect to make a high return, you know, they really don't belong in these markets. And so you have to have a real question about what their motivation is to do it. Anyone who thinks they're going to make a lot of money here tells me that's a guy who wants to flip the property. So, you know, number 3 goes with number 1. Pricing philosophy is very important. We've already seen some of the RDOF winners. RDOF was a FCC program awarded a couple of years ago. Some of them have set their basic price in rural communities at $100. You know, so that's not where you know, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, we just gave you all this grant money and you're going to have $100 basic rates. You know, our folks can't afford that. So truly understanding their pricing philosophy is important. And then customer service. I mean, that's one that's, you know, a little hard to get a hold of, but if they have existing customers, it's not hard to actually start calling up, you know, mayors and council people and people, you know, in other cities who they're already serving and say, tell me the real story about them. And so, you know, those things all matter, because anyone who, if they fail any of these tests, they may not be who you want as a partner. This is the hardest one for communities to get their hands around, because every ISP will tell you nowadays, oh, we have unlimited access to money. Nobody has unlimited access to money. There's no such thing. You know, anyone who's, unless you're, you know, if you're a Fortune 500 company, you probably do. But you know, a lot of these folks are making outrageous claims. They're talking about how solvent they are, and it's really, really hard for you to judge that. Again, it's something that I even have a hard time judging, because they don't really want to share the right kind of stuff that, you know, to really understand how they do it. You also want to check if an ISP has what I call red flags. Have they ever been in big lawsuits? Have they ever gone bankrupt? Have they ever, you know, been pulled up in front of a state commission and scolded for bad financial practices? So you want to check them out and do some real due diligence on them, you know, to find out what their past is about. So capacity to grow is another one. You know, I know little tiny ILECs who have 400 customers who are out looking to go get grants for 2 or 3 counties. And God bless them, but they're going to grow from 200 to 30,000 customers with those grants. And the question you have to ask yourself is, can they handle that? Because they've, those 400 customers they've had were monopoly customers. They never had to work to get them. Are they really going to be good at that large size? And this doesn't just go with tiny companies. It goes with someone who's got 10,000 customers and wants to grow to 100. I can tell you, as someone who's been there, and I had over 100,000 customers, growing is the hardest thing there is to do for an ISP. It puts stress on every part of their business. The staff is stressed, their finances are stressed, all their operational systems are stressed. They fall behind, and then trying to catch up adds more stress to the whole process. And so, when they just say, yeah, we can grow, like, it won't be any problem for us to add all these customers on, I instantly get suspicious. An ISP who comes in and tells me it's going to be hard is a whole lot more trustworthy to me, because it's not easy. And it's not easy for any ISP. It's not easy for Charter to come in and buy a cable company in a new market and start it under their name. It's really very hard to go into a new market. So that's really the biggest challenge. And in these grants, we're going to see a ton of ISPs who are trying to get bigger and hurry. So we're going to see some of them fail. And so you don't want that to be your partner. I don't know how to ask. I don't know how to tell you to check this out other than to ask a lot of questions and to make sure this is on your checklist so that you consider it. So another thing that you want, if you're going to hand folks ARPA money or any other kind of grant money, or if you're just going to give them concessions of some sort, of which there's a lot of different kind of concessions communities can make, they should be giving you something in return. If this is a partnership, that means both of you get something out of it, right? So, we want to make sure that they really have low income plans. And they need to have a low income plan that's not just going to be the federal one, because that ACP plan is going to be out of money in 2 years. And if the government doesn't fill that back up, it's going to go to zero. They have to have a plan of their own on top of, just saying they're going to do that. By the time these current networks are built under the grants that are coming up, if the federal government doesn't refill that pot, there won't be a federal low income plan. And so, I'm one of the few people crying wolf in the wilderness here, but like I do the math and the plans are going to run out of money. So they have to have one of their own, and that they can also have the federal one. And if they keep filling that up forever, everyone will be happy. They have to agree to reach everybody. If you're going to give them a grant, they can't cherry pick. Let's not get a grant for the rural part of a county and then only serve 80% of the people. That's not, you need to have firm commitments with firm contracts where we have maps drawn, and it's like, you will reach everybody in this area. Absolutely. It's an ironclad, and there's got to be penalties for them not doing so of some sort. I think if I'm giving folks money, I don't want to see any installation fees. They don't really change the finances of these companies. And if I'm giving them money, then I think that's one of the things I buy with it. I want to have some real serious discussions about the construction timeline. You don't want a partner who is given 4 years with the grant and starts the construction in year 4 and then asks for an extension from the grant and doesn't maybe even get it from their federal grants. And so you want someone who's, if they get the grant for your area, you want them to kind of start right away. I don't want them to start 2 or 3 years from now. It's like, I know they have long timelines into the grants, but I want to see action. And so do the folks in your communities. You're not going through this whole study process with Bill to make a partnership with an ISP who is going to start construction in 2025. Everyone in the county is going to be going, which idiot approved that plan? You don't want that to be you. So, also, there's nothing wrong for asking for free or reduced services for anchor institutions being schools, libraries, city halls, nonprofits. Don't be afraid to ask for those things. Say, look, I'm giving you X number, 100,000 or $1 million. Here's the kind of things I want in return for it. A good ISP is going to be your partner, and it's going to make sure that they're doing right by you. And these are the sort of things, and you'll have your own list. As you're out meeting with all your local constituents, which is on your list, you're going to hear the things that are most important to them. And so, that's going to be, that's going to be your list. This is my sort of generic list, but every community has a different list of what they might want out of this process. So there's things that you can contribute more than just handing them cash. One is to guarantee that all the local government institutions will be their customer for the next 10 or 20 years. I mean, become an anchor tenant. That's of great value to them. You know, you can give them land and buildings, and these actually count in any kind of assets, count in all these various grants as matching funds. And so they're a non-cash matching fund. And I don't know a local government that doesn't have some properties that they've been wanting to get rid of anyhow. So it's like, hey, let's, you know, that's a great place to put the ISP building or whatever. So don't forget that you can offer those sort of things and put a fair value on it, and so that the grant process recognizes that fair value. The biggest thing the local communities can do is make sure that you ease the construction process. And any given county that has, you know, a county seat and several smaller towns plus the county and maybe some parklands and you know, all sorts of different government entities, state roads, maybe a federal highway running through. There's a real hard mess there for an ISP to actually get permitting and get the construction done. One of the things that I always tell communities to do, and you might want to consider this as part of your outreach to communities now, they need to start looking at their permitting process. And it's not just permitting, it's permitting, how you instruct inspection, you know, how do you locate existing utilities underground. When these guys come to town and are ready to build, they need you to step up and match them in effort. And so, you know, to give you a few examples, you know, I went to a city recently to do a project and they said we had to put in a permit for every single pole, you know, and there was like 4,000 poles. That's 4,000 permits. It's like, you're insane. We actually said, if you do that, we're going to take our fiber somewhere else. You know, we're not coming to your town. And so every city has grown these processes over the years organically. There may not even be coded in law. What happens is your facility people get annoyed with the electric company or get annoyed with the cable company, and they invent a new rule. And these rules can be a major impediment to somebody who wants to go and build everything all at once. No one's built everything all at once in most counties for a long time. So you know, we've had, you know, the last time cities had that done was when the cable companies came. The last time the rural areas had it done was when either the electric or the telephone companies built. And that was a long time ago. Finally, don't forget that, you know, tax abatements, you know, give them any kind of tax that you could be charging them for being there, you know, give them an abatement for 5 or 10 or 20 years as part of this process. That's worth that's dollars also in their pocket. And if you do that, that has to be recognized by them as a value. So there's my contact information. There's my Pots and Pans by CCG that I write every day. I talk about this and about 5,000 other topics, but they're all related to communities and small ISPs. I mean, that's who I write for. So I don't know what Bill's plans are, but I suspect we're opening it up to questions, right, Bill?
Yes, and Doug, Illinois has what many people would consider to be terrible right-of-way laws.
Yes, they do.
Property owners own to the center of the road.
Right.
Any advice on the role communities can play to ease that burden? Yes.
You know, because you're not the only state that has that. As these local communities are talking about giving these grants out, it's an education process with your public. Like, do not be holding those ISPs up for ransom and telling them they got to give you $5,000 to cross your property, because that stops everybody past you. I mean, you can't stop people from doing that, but you can educate and get 98 or 99% of the people to be good citizens here. The point is, this fiber network, even with grants, as I told you, these networks are barely going to financially pencil in. And those kind of impediments can be the difference between it working and not working. And so that's part of your job as the government, to have that talked about a lot. Now, you don't really have to talk about that too early. Once you have a grant partner and it looks like grants are going to be awarded, that's the time to talk about it, because that's when they're going to want to start talking about getting rights of ways. But you know, you have to take an active role in that, or what you will find is you will have 10 curmudgeons who stop the fiber project, and you know, that's to nobody's benefit. So, and I hate to say, but you know, we all have, every community's got our 5% of curmudgeons.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, that's correct. So yeah, so again, the communities have to take an active role in that. You can't be passive about it. This is your citizens. you have to explain to them why this is not in anybody's best benefit.
So one community benefit that some people want to negotiate is their own kind of anchor tenant network that would connect, where the private or public sector goes together and hooks up everyone. That's the way a lot of communities start their community fiber networks, is to aggregate their big folks. If you pull that out of the private ISP, what's the impact on that?
Well, that idea came in when the cable companies came, because these were big, rich companies coming in to beg you for a right of way to every part of your street. And somehow or the other, the idea got started like, well, give us a community network and we'll let you have right of ways. Fiber is a lot more expensive today than it was to build those cable networks. And again, if you start asking for too many things, you might get an ISP go, you know what, this community is not worth it, because right down the road's 3 other cities of the same size. I'll just go there. And the county and the rural areas, they need those areas. They need the rural schools as tenants. They need the rural city halls as tenants. Again, the projects, they need to get as many people hooked up as possible just to make this project work. So I know that sounds attractive. You're basically asking for them to not only give you free internet access forever, but you're also asking them to give you free facilities forever. And there comes a point where it's the last straw that breaks the camel's back. Now, bigger cities still do that because, and the ISPs do it. There's enough money, and when there's a house every 100 feet, the density kind of, it's like, well, we're going to do fine here. That's not what you're talking about with these grants. These grants are talking about where houses are 1/4 mile and a 1/2 mile and a mile apart. So, that's not you're going to hear many ISPs go, thanks for asking. No. At the end of the day, the point is, and there's nothing wrong with asking. The point is, these things have to be negotiations. Put your whole wish list on the table. There's nothing hard, because they might say yes to some of the things that you would be surprised by. It just depends on the ISP. So,
Okay.
but that's one that I, as an ISP, would have a hard time with anymore, because these projects are not going to be very profitable. So,
And then one more question about what do you kind of see as the break-even point on per passing on a community network like this?
what you have to do for the ISP to be profitable is pull the cost per passing down after grants in the range of $2,000 to $2,500. And so if it costs $8,000 per passing to build the thing, we need to find them, $5,500 or $6,000 per passing in grants. If it's any higher than that, it doesn't pencil in for them to even make a go of it. Because they're going to finance these things, and if it's any more than that, the debt cost buries the project. That's actually what buries the project, or debt cost. These are all going to be finance networks, and so that's the metric you're shooting for. If you're in a community where the starting price is $4,000 a passing, like a lot of farmlands are, that's going to be fairly easy to get the grant. If you're in Appalachia, if you're which it's not a whole lot in Illinois, but I've just worked with a community where the cost for passing was $13,000 in one part of the county and $37,000 in the rest. That's if you have that kind of situation, we're talking about needing 100% grant almost to make it work. So, but that's the metric. They're trying to get down, and they can get there through federal grants, state grants, local grants, and it kind of takes the pile of all them coming together sometimes to get them down to that number. So
good. Kathy has a question here. Doug, do you have an opinion regarding government investment in open source or middle mile technologies? I think
I'm all for it, because and in fact, I helped to put together a program in Maine to do just that. So in Maine, the government's going to own all the middle mile, and they'll make them available to everybody. And over time, they'll look like profit. They'll just keep rolling into building more middle mile. The point of these grants are really aimed at the last mile. And so, some parts of your community are just isolated, and getting to them, somebody has to do it. And so that's a really good use of ARPA money, for example, would be to get fiber out to the different parts of the country, of the county, just to make it easy for everyone else to do it. In doing that, you're not going to, you know, there's a whole lot of counties go, I'm going to build this middle mile and then I'll lease it to everybody and I'm going to get rich. It's like, nobody's leasing that fiber from you for very much money to get out to 100 houses. I mean, you just have to be realistic that you're not going to make a lot of money on that. You're doing it to help expand broadband. If you happen to get lucky and somebody puts a cell tower out of there, you might get a little, you know, eventual rent on that fiber. But middle mile that doesn't connect to fairly big towns doesn't have very much commercial value. So, you know, but the idea is that's one of the most wonderful things community can do. And in fact, go look up something called Project Thor, Thor, in Colorado. 6 or 7 counties got together and built middle mile so that all the hospitals and everybody could be connected. And because they're in a part of the world where CenturyLink would have 3-day outages, and that was not acceptable when a hospital goes out for 3 days, obviously. And so, you know, the counties there got together and built this network, and it's been a huge success. So the bigger the footprint for the middle mile, the better. I mean, not just 1 county, but 6 counties is really the way to go. And the larger you get, the easier it is to fund it, believe it or not. So.
Good. Other questions? Doug, how do you go building a relationship with that broadband provider? You know, we start off with these interviews, which are kind of get acquainted, have some coffee kind of things. How do you move that forward through a funnel of decision making?
Once you're ready to put grant money on the table, then what I recommend is to get a little more formal, but not real formal. RFPs are not a good way to go, but RFIs are. So an RFI is a request for information. It asks all the ISPs who might be interested to make a proposal. And that's important because in most counties, what you're going to find is you're not going to get one ISP who wants to build the whole county. You're going to have one who wants to build the east, and one who wants to build the west, and one who wants to build the north. And so, you know, you've got to get them all on the table on an equal footing. And the way to do that is through an RFI where they formally engage you to start talking about it. They put a written proposal on the table. You know, sitting over coffee is not a written proposal. You have to get to the point where they're actually saying, I need X million dollars, or, you know, here's what it takes for me to do that. Because that now allows you to start having real conversations. For the whole county, you know, all these guys want $5 million of ARPA money from me. I only have 1 million. So let's go back and see what I can get done with them. You know, you have to, if you're looking for a whole county solution, you know, you don't want to end up only serving 1/4 of it with your money. You want to try to get it to help all the parts of the county. And of course, the way to do that is through matching funds. You know, the county money doesn't go very far. If you build it out of your own money, it goes way far if you match other bigger grants they're getting. So that RFI process gets everybody to the table. It allows you to, and you'll get multiple ISPs who want to serve the same area. It allows you to, you know, figure out which one of them is your best partner. And so, you know, until they actually put a map in front of you, it's generic talk until they go, I want to serve here. Now I can have a real discussion. So I really love that. I see it working. In fact, that's probably the predominant thing I'm doing right now is helping counties do that. So, I mean, it's a fairly ABCDEFG process, but boy, it gets the ISPs to the table. It also gets the ISPs who are not really interested. You think that's going to be your partner and they don't even respond, like, okay, now we know they're not really interested in the county. So, because everybody says they're interested.
Great models that you want to share of an RFI, or should we, different counties we should go look at?
I'll have to look. I think I have to see, Bill. I'll send you one. I think there is, but I have to go look before I just tell you yes. I'll send it to you and you can disseminate it.
Okay.
You know, so you know, it's a process that really works well, and so yeah, I highly recommend that sort of thing. So.
Okay. And there's a question about trails, using existing corridors and trails to link properties. That's part of that asset that a county would have, or, you know, if it's a public trail, certainly putting fiber alongside that is an easy kind of thing. The problem is on trails, not many houses are on a trail, so.
No, but it might be a great middle mile route. So yeah, trails, abandoned railroads. I mean, there's all sorts of assets sometimes in counties that you actually have. You have to kind of get the map out and see what you got. So, one of the easiest things counties can do is make it real easy and cheap to get across bridges and stuff. Those are really sometimes a major problem for ISPs. So, those kind of things can make a big difference as well. So.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about the, we've got a lot of communities, everyone wants broadband now, right? I mean, the timing, people are pretty desperate for it. And so a lot of people think, well, we can do some kind of combo fiber and fixed wireless kind of scenario to get service to our county quickly. What's your take on that approach, and how do you do that to not close off the route to fiber in the future?
I've preached that model for 10 years. And so, and it takes a partner who's actually willing to commit to you to convert wireless to fiber eventually. And that's usually a co-op. Honestly, hardly anyone else will make that commitment to you. And so if you have a partner who says, look, I'll take the profits from this, and over time we'll start rolling it into fiber, that I've seen that model work. I've seen it work a number of places. With all the grant money on the table today, that model's completely dead. If you build wireless now, there's not going to be the money to do that upgrade to fiber. So if you put your money into that temporary fix, you're going to end up with temporary broadband for the next 40 years, because it's the big money that gets the fiber, and the big money is available now. You got to grab the big money when it's here. And so, anyone who tells you, any ISP who tells you we want all your ARPA money to build wireless, and yeah, we'll take care of you in the future, that unless it's a co-op, you cannot believe them. And a co-op still may take 30 years to do that. Again, they're not going to easily raise the money to do that in the future. So, but that used to be my favorite model, and now it's probably my least favorite model. So.
Good. This is, I think that's a real interesting public policy challenge for people. The rational approach is, okay, hold for fiber. The more, it's like a thirsty guy in the desert, don't drink that water, and but it's, I think it's,
well, and it doesn't have to 100%
think about that.
And it doesn't have to 100% be fiber. I'm a real fan of getting the cable companies to go 3 miles around the towns. That usually picks up a whole lot of folks, and it's like, and they should have done it out of their own pocket years ago. Those are not unprofitable pockets, but they've all been penny pinchers, so I just want a fast broadband technology to be built. So, these grants just change the paradigm. It's a one-time chance to get a future-proof network. And that's a word we all throw around way too much. But, I don't want to build a network that's obsolete 10 years from now. That's not it. What you got to remember, and I should have had a slide on this because it's just the best slide in the whole world. The broadband demand has been growing 21% per year since 1980. And so, that means that I need a network 10 years from now that can handle 3 times the volume that it does today. And that means 20 years from now, it's going to have to handle 100 times the volume it does today. Well, a lot of technologies absolutely cannot do that. And if you don't believe that, the average house today is using 500 gigabytes per month of broadband. And it was not very many years in the past where we were using 200. It was not many years before that we were using 50. It was not many years before that we were using 4. And so as we all use all those things Bill talked about, where everything is connected to broadband, that network has got to be really robust. So.
And yeah, and I think that I hear quite a bit now about people, the super users now. The average family uses 500 gig, but there's
about 2% use 2 terabytes per month, and now something like 15% use 1 terabyte per month. They're not super users; they're just users. That just means you have 3 kids in your house. That's all that means. This is not somebody running a business out of their house. This just means you got 3 kids and they play games. I mean, that's no longer a super user category. Now you'll get the occasional guy who uses 5 terabytes and he's running a server out of his house. I mean, he's actually a business who's pretending to be a residence. That's not normal. So.
Hey, Bill, I think Kathy's raising a really good point that we should talk about with Doug. Do you see that in the chat?
Oh, yeah, one of our rural co-ops feel they've been shut out due to RDOF bids. How do we bring them back into the discussion?
Well, I guess my first question is that particular RDOF been awarded yet, or is it one of those that are still floating out there?
Kathy, do you know that? Feel free to jump on.
Yeah, my conversation that it was awarded, so it went to a wireless provider.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard because, once you get I have to look at the specific place, but those RDOF awards look like checkerboards. They're a little up, there's places right next door they didn't serve, but there's no expense, no reason why not. And it's really hard to build a fiber network in between the holes of that wireless network. It's going to be really hard. It's hard for that. It was hard enough for that electric co-op to make a business plan to build the whole thing, and now they're left with the scraps. It's not easy. Some of them are doing it anyhow, because what they're saying is, look, once we're in there, we're going to beat the heck out of that wireless provider, because but they're doing that out of their own equity, and that's hard to do. So it's a really challenge. I mean, I get that call twice a week, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And a lot of times there is no economic answer to it. So,
Anything
Bill,
new on the electric co-op engagement in broadband, Doug?
what's that?
Anything new on the electric co-ops becoming more engaged, or?
Well, electric co-ops are of 3 types. There's some of them are so poor that they can't raise the money even with the grant. So there are some electric co-ops have absolutely no money in the bank. And so, and unfortunately they tend to be the most rural, and a lot of them are in southern and in very, very, very rural places. And so they can't pull this off because they can't find the matching money. Then there's the ones who are pretty well off, who are innovators. And then there's the middle category. I call them the co-ops run by the 80-year-olds. I mean, most electric co-ops are run by members who are retired, and some of them, even today, you'll go to electric co-op board meeting, and 6 of the 7 board members don't even have a computer in their house. They're not quite getting it. So that's a challenge, and that's a challenge for the cooperative members to go, let's elect new board members here who care about broadband, because those old guys don't get it. Most of them are getting it, so that most of the ones who are voting to do this also have the 80-year-old members, but they're going, all you do is say, look, this is for your grandkids, and they go, okay, got it, right? But that is a real issue. Some of them are simply not willing to take any chances. They're risk averse. No, most co-ops have made up their mind by now. There's not a whole lot of new ones. There's still some. I'm working with one right now who's now deciding if they want to do something. So a few of them have been on the fence for a while, but I'd say most of them, they've been pounding on this for 3 years. Most of them have heard this to the point where they've decided one way or the other. So.
Okay, good.
Bill,
There's a question.
oh, sorry, I was going to say Matt had his hand up, and I don't know if he's disappeared. Is he, Matt, are you still there?
Yeah, thanks, Adrienne, and Bill and Doug, great conversation today. Yeah, this is Matt Schmidt with the Illinois Office of Broadband. Just wanted to emphasize for folks in your area, if there is an RDOF award, we do not consider that prohibitive of future applicants for Connect Illinois Round 3. And so really reach out to the Office of Broadband. I think the example that was just discussed is a great one. And we want to just make sure that we're empowering local providers and communities to get the kind of service that the technology they want. And so don't look at an RDOF award as an area taking off that area for eligibility for a Connect Illinois award.
And
so,
that's the perfect answer. Good to see you, Matt. I haven't seen you for a while.
Hey, Doug, I've been paying attention all these years. Nice to hear your voice again.
Yeah, and there are other states who have done that. a lot of states have not. A lot of states will not give
Right.
state awards out in RDOF areas. So if the state will fund those areas, then we got to get that electric co-op talking to Matt. I mean, the answer is put those two together. So.
Yeah, there's a question about partnerships between co-ops and ISPs. And in Minnesota, we've got several I could find out. One is Arrowhead Electric, way up in the northeast corner of Minnesota. That is they built the network, but then they have a local telephone cooperative from a neighboring area. They do the operations and management and retail sales and customer support on that network. So that's one example. We have another electric co-op in the far north, up in Roseau, Lake of the Woods County, if that's it's way up on the Canadian border. And there they have a electric co-op, and then they're partnering with a small privately held ISP to do some of their networking and customer support and so on.
And these are big. I mean,
in
Tennessee, almost the whole state is those partnerships. I mean, there's like 20
Yeah.
of them. So yeah.
Okay, good. And then a third model is in, we talked about this RS Fiber project in Sibley County, and they created a co-op to build the network. And then that is really, they contract with a private ISP to actually operate and do the retail sales on that network. So there's all kinds of different approaches here between ISPs and co-ops and communities that we've seen that ownership and management and operations are really two very different sides of the pie now, that they don't have to always go together.
Well, and I want to remind you that as you're trying to talk to these folks about partnerships, sometimes the right answer is to put two of those ISPs together. And we're actually starting to see that happen. We just helped two ISPs to agree to do that in Colorado in a county that's pretty rural. And so, but you have to get them all to the table talking to go, you got these strengths and weaknesses, you got these strengths. Do you know each other? I mean, a good story is in Tennessee, a giant 100,000 member electric co-op, 150,000 member telephone co-op, headquarters in the same town, and they never had met each other.
Oh.
They didn't even know each other. They'd never talked in 80 years. So I put them together, and now they're partnering on a huge amount of stuff. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, this wasn't even a big town.
Well,
So,
that's
that's two different. That's two different worlds. These ISPs don't necessarily know each other. You have to always assume that they do not. So,
yeah, and I think that's a great way to end today with Doug, is to show that the community can really be a bridge, gathering information, sharing information, pulling people together to think about new solutions. And with your teams and your connections and your communities, don't be afraid to try and build those bridges between different organizations. And even now we talk, we've got a fair number of counties that are working together in the Kaskaskia group and the Ogle group and Peoria Woodford. So there's a lot of opportunity there to cross county lines and make things happen at a bigger scale. Doug, thank you so much. Any last words?
well, I will send you, if I can figure out one that's shareable in RFI, and then because they may be too specific, but it'd be a shell maybe, I'll see. And then I will send you the a couple page write-up that explains the huge fast growth of broadband. It's one of the best selling points about why you need a future-proof network. So
good. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Doug, and just appreciate your time and knowledge sharing. So thank you.
and I also wanted to say good luck, Adrian, with your dental surgery.
Thank you so much, Doug. No, listen, I love hearing from you, and I think you have such a warm and kind approach to sharing information with communities that sometimes can find all of this very daunting. So I love having you aboard. Very approachable, knowledgeable, and thanks for your time, Doug. Really.
Oh, you're so very welcome. I think what you guys are doing here in Illinois is great. So let's make sure all these groups get broadband.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right. Very
Okay,
Good.
thanks again.
Thank
Good.
you. See you all later.
Thanks.
Okay, take care, everybody. Sorry, Bill.
Good luck, Adrian.
Thank you. See you guys next week. And have a good 4th, everyone.
Indeed.
Good. Our next hour is in the work groups, and you can really work on whatever it is that you guys need to work on. You want to continue to work on your vision. If you have things on strategy on your survey and reporting you want to do on that and planning for that, the provider interviews, like think about which providers, who's going to do that. I do think it's a great practice to get around and chat with them in an informal way and kind of check their openness, just learn what makes them tick a little bit. And then as Doug suggests, when you want to get more formal and meet the needs of your public processes and so on, then you can use a tool like that, request for information, to get more specific data and make them put the pen to paper a little bit. So that, and then you can adjourn when you need to. Any questions or comments on any of the process so far or steps ahead?
Bill, this is George. I just have one follow-up that we may need just a little bit of clarification on the RFI versus RFP process. I totally followed what the gentleman was discussing, but dealing with government entities, I just want to make sure that eventually we may have to get to an RFP to follow our procurement rules. So just putting that out there for the group too as well. And I think more than one of us are will be government agencies like that. So any additional language or assistance or a contact person who has experience with that would be very helpful.
Okay, well, let me think about that a little bit. And
Okay.
Generally, an RFI, you're looking for more general responses
Correct.
and frameworks.
Correct.
And an RFP would say, okay, we want to serve the Northwest County part of Ogle County, for example, with very specific kind of purchasing requirements.
Yeah.
And I think, those rules vary by state as to what the powers of public agencies could do. Anyone from a county government like Dell, would you have any feedback on that? Or anyone else from a different county about the requirements in Illinois?
Well, maybe I can clarify.
No, here's Dell coming on. He's gonna,
Okay.
let's hear what he has to
Sorry
say.
about that. For procurement? Is that the question for,
Yeah, so when could you use an RFI as opposed to an RFP in
well, the
county?
first time I've heard of an RFI is today.
Okay,
We have an RFP, that's a request for proposals. And that is for the procurement based on lowest bid, lowest responsible bidder. And then you have requests for qualifications, which is an RFQ. That's where you don't base your decision on price, but you base your decision on the qualifications of the individual or the firm. I have never heard of an RFI in Illinois.
okay.
I
Well, that's
think it would be
interesting. We'll do a
similar to
little research on that.
Yeah, that's so I think
Hello, an RFI is a request for information. So you're basically going out and instead of asking for price, you're asking for qualifications and information about their technology, about their training, about their installation. So it's more of an information gathering. So you can compare apples to apples. You ask each provider the same question and you find the best answer or the best group of answer among the providers.
It would seem to me that that would be similar to an RFQ, except you're not just looking at the qualifications of the company. You're also looking at a plan and some of their abilities. I am guessing
Correct.
that you could start out with an RFI, but before you go to actual procurement, you're going to have to change that into an RFP or RFQ situation.
Good, thank you. And then, some communities run these these dollar allocations as a grant program, as an economic development grant, and they might run them through an economic development authority or port authority or some other kind of financial entity that the county may have, or the county may have those powers themselves to create a program using, for example, ARPA dollars, and then award them in a competitive process as well. So as opposed to more of a contractual for fee for service kind of thing. And we are going to later in the program, we will be talking about some of these financial tools, and we'll make sure we cover that RFPQI kind of in some details.
Thanks,
Good.
Bill.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Good. Well, then we'll just, Nancy, we can stop recording and go to